This is the June 2024 Innovative Marine EXT 200 update. And this is the new replacement tank. The other tank, as I posted before, unfortunately had a leak, and I spent a lot of time trying to decide if I should get a custom tank or just use the free replacement tank that Innovative Marine sent me. And I'm trying to trust them, so I went with another Innovative Marine tank. So this is it. I'll go over anything new that I did. Kind of start at the top and go down. A lot of the stuff is the same. Lighting is the same. Haven't really changed anything of it. Still got to do wire management for the lights. Haven't finished that. But all my lighting's the same with the Red Sea, and then I've got 3 of the Reef Brights, and then I've got all the Red Sea LEDs, 3 of the 160s, 1 of the 90s, and then on the left 1 of the 50s. And then I've got the 3 Reef Brights up there. And as I posted before, I did get a par meter, and it is way too bright, approaching 1,000 near par near the top. So I actually turned them down quite a bit because they're actually a lot of light. So when I moved some of the SPS over from the garage tank into here, I noticed some of them were bleaching a little bit, so I'm hoping turning it down will help. So as far as the tank itself, obviously it's essentially the same tank. The only difference would be the sides of the tank are a little bit different. I'll show that in a little bit. Let's move over there. So the older tanks had a huge black, basically the black backing of the tank would wrap around quite a bit, even further, about as far as that MP40 is right there. The backing would wrap around, and now it's just a tiny, only about this much. So that's nice. It gives you more viewing on the side. And that's, otherwise I don't see any difference in this tank. It's essentially the same tank. As far as the corals and the fish, I really didn't lose too many in the way of fish. I did get a nice new fairy wrasse. He's not out right now, but if he comes out, unfortunately he's a little more aggressive to the fairy wrasses, and so out in the garage he's scared and basically killed my red fairy wrasse, and then my Scots fairy wrasse, which I really liked. He was harassing it, so I moved it to a different tank where all the tangs were, and that had the egg crate cover, and he jumped right through the egg crate. So there's the nice fairy wrasse that I got, but he's a little more aggressive. And so I lost those 2 fairy wrasses. Along the way I lost one of my chalk basses, so I've got the 3 younger chalk basses, but my older chalk bass, he passed away. I think that's about it. Otherwise, I saved all the other fish despite the leak at midnight, finishing at 4:30 a.m., which was rough. And then setting up the rocks, I did it a little bit differently this time than I did in the old tank. This one on the left is the same. I just turned it. And then that purple stylo continues to grow out of control. So that thing's huge. The Oregon Tort is doing quite well as well. And so this rock in this area over here is similar. I moved my mushroom rock, which used to be more in the center of the tank. Kind of moved him back there. And that thing's exploding as mushrooms do. GSP rock is going crazy. I'm gonna have to cut that back pretty soon. Did this guy as an island sort of all by itself, which is kind of cool. Trying to decide, maybe I'll put a couple SPS on the top. I got these square bricks that you can see here, and they allow you to just stick your frags on and you can move them around, and so far nothing's really knocked them over, which is nice. So I haven't found any knocked over. So even the snails that climb up at night seem to not knock these over. So you can move them around, see how they like the light adjustment, and then if they're happy, then I'm probably gonna take frags off of there and then glue them down eventually. So I'm not sure on the placement. A lot of the nicer frags that I got right before the leak did survive. Unfortunately, all my big ones died. So I had huge bunch of SPS across here that were quite large. All of those died, but my little frags, like my Walt Disney right there, and my Disney Junior, and behind it is a home wrecker, and a bunch of those frags, they survived, which is nice. So hopefully they'll grow up nice over time. I did put my candy cane in the middle over there, which is kind of cool. It's like in a hole back there. And then one of my rock anemone decided to move one night and planted himself in the middle of the candy cane, which is interesting. So be it. I got a couple of new torches, these two here, which are quite beautiful. And then my old torches are not happy. They weren't happy with the tank move, so we'll see how they do over time. I've had those for years. And then one of the few SPS that did survive, put him right up front. And then these, I'm blanking on the name of these. They're kind of like Ghanies, these little flower pots. Man, these things grow fast. They are taking off. For anyone who wants something, a softie that grows really well, they seem to be a lot hardier than the Ghani. There's a Ghani right next to it, the pink one. But these things, man, Alveopora, that's what they are. These Alveopora seem very hardy, and man, they are massive. They are growing quick. I'm surprised how big they're getting, how quick. So if anyone wants something that's pretty hardy and grows quick. And then all of my hammers and softies, which I had on the right side of the tank originally, those are still there, doing well. My Favia, which I never do well with Favia. Basically, they don't do anything. Although that Dragon Soul, I think it's called, that one's maybe growing a little bit. But the rest, I don't know. I've never had luck with Favias. And then my Rock Anemone Island is doing all right, except for the one that bailed and decided to go over by the candy cane, but that's fine. So, not surprisingly, all my softies survived. It was just the SPS that I lost. So the tank's doing pretty well. Fish are doing really well. They're pretty happy. I was able to add the yellow tang back. So he was in the garage for a long time because he was destroying the Desjardins. They still bicker, but the Desjardins is a little bit bigger now and he sticks up for himself. So there they go, tasseling again. But it's a lot better than it was before. So now I'm able to keep both of these and I'm able to get the yellow tang back in the house, which is nice. So that's the update on the tank itself, on the corals, and most of the fish. All the other fish are pretty much the same. And then someone did ask for the plumbing, which was actually quite easy because I simply used the same plumbing as before, and it was plug and play. You just unscrew the old ones and screw them back in. So the way that I have this plumbed is I have two of the M2s plumbed in, and the way I did that is originally there was only two holes here, and so I actually drilled out a third hole. So that, because originally I think it was only maybe these two. So I drilled out a third hole, that way I can have my emergency return as it's designed but then I have a hole for two returns, two separate returns. And then I have the right M2 is going to straight up to the return teed off, but the left portion of the tee goes to my UV sterilizer, which is here. And I've got a valve so I can control the flow, although I have it wide open right now. I made the mistake of getting this, so I'm running the hydros, and so I wanted to see what my flow actually was, so I got this little flow meter. Problem is I don't know if you can tell on video, but there's a little gate in the middle of it to divert the water into the actual flow meter, which is just a little spinning dial. It cuts the size of this in half, so it's already a 3/4 inch pipe. By the time you cut it in half, it's almost no flow, so it was kind of dumb. It was cutting down flow. Plus, I noticed that the numbers I was getting made sense because the M2, if you run it at 50%, it's about 1,000 gallons an hour. Half of it's going to be about 500, and that's about where it was, so it just sort of made sense. So I can just, in my head, calculate what the flow is to the UV sterilizer, and really I'd like it to be closer to 800, so I just cranked the power up to 60-70%, and half of it's going this way. It's about that much, so that was a waste. So I ended up having to cut that thing out and fixing it, but otherwise I've got the other return going up to the left return, and then the standard plumbing is you've got your 3 drains. The 2 go over, you've got one with the valve. The second one is your first emergency drain, and then you've got your 3rd emergency drain here. So plumbing is fairly straightforward otherwise. And then I've got the Coral View Hydros controllers, which I love. They're pretty amazing. I got to give them some props because when the leak happened, I took 2 of these controllers to the garage to see if I can control the garage tanks. Actually had some difficulty trying to set them in the garage because they were set here in the house, and so I had a lot of trouble with it. I ended up putting magnets on them to reset them, and it wouldn't work. And so when I set this tank up, initially I was worried that I'd be able to get them to reset up with the whole hydro system. I just powered them off and on a couple of times, and then they just remembered everything, all the prior settings, everything worked exactly like it did before, which is fairly complicated. And so I'm pretty impressed by the technology that it works so well, just like I had it before. And then I do have the Avast Marine calc stir that I was going to start last night. However, there's something wrong with the motor. So I'm sending a video to Avast Marine tonight, and they're gonna have to send me out a new motor. So my plan is to run calc fairly low amount consistently, get my pH up, and then consistent alk and calcium, and then I've got my alk, calcium, and then my Tropic Marine Part C, so I usually run that. So I'll run that to supplement the calc, but I think that'll work better because the big issue that I had before was that the salinity would rise so much in my tank because I was using vast amounts of 2-part, and when you run 2-part, the corals use up the calcium of the calcium chloride and the hydroxide of the sodium hydroxide, the soda ash, and you're left with sodium chloride. And so the salt that you're adding to the tank really becomes a problem. I don't do water changes, so my salt levels would climb higher and higher and higher, and that was a real problem. So hopefully by using Kalkwasser, I can keep the salinity down lower. So I'm hoping that'll help. Plus a pH boost. So that's the tank. Hopefully get the Kalkwasser online soon. And then it'll be exciting to see what happens to all those SPS frags up top, get those starting to grow. See you next time.